Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles, and welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, and where we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And in today's episode, the topic is Kawhi Leonard back to being dominant? So that's the topic I'm going to get into in today's video. But before we get into that, I want you guys to please make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Also, our Dreamerspro Max online sports premium community is available in the description below. Is a place where you can go start basketball topics and debates, consume original content that you're going to get nowhere else, chat live during games, also go live with us after games to be able to get post-game reactions, and do so many other things that I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy. So if you guys are interested in that, be sure to check it out and get 7 days of free access. I'm sure you guys are going to love it, especially now with the second half of the season ramping up. You don't want to miss out on any of the topics and debates and the chats and the live streams that we're going to be doing on the platform. So make sure you go ahead and check that out in the description below. Now, let me get back into the topic here. So y'all know Kawhi Leonard is my favorite player, but for the last, let's say, 2 weeks or so, I've been getting on him, right? I've been getting on him because he hasn't been playing his best basketball. And listen, I can't sit here and criticize Shannon Sharpe or criticize Stephen A. Smith or criticize this person for being a homer, for loving LeBron or loving this guy. Then when it comes to my favorite player, we can only produce topics on him that are when we're saying nice things about him. I don't think people are going to respect you. I think the fans I think the viewers on this channel understand that, listen, you got to be balanced, right? If you're just going to be there being a homer like Shannon Sharpe, then after a while, people are not going to take you seriously. So you need to be able to criticize guys when it's necessary. But in this case, I want to give Kawhi Leonard some props today because I'm excited to see him playing great basketball again. But in the month of February, he was up and down. Okay, he wasn't playing his best basketball. Let's just be honest. The team went into the All-Star break losing through 3 games in a row. He was part of that because Kawhi was not closing games very well. He wasn't playing great in clutch time minutes. These are games that are within 5 points, within I think 4 to 5 minutes remaining in the game. He was I think he was around 28% in those minutes in NBA games, and that's not very good. Right, and to me, it was confusing because I'm used to seeing Kawhi Leonard be a closer and being a late game, crunch time player. That's what I'm used to seeing from him. He's a clutch basketball guy. So when I saw him underperforming late in games, it was confusing. I was like, what is going on here? And it was hurting the team, right? It was hurting the team because their best player was not playing very well, down the stretch. But going into last night's game, I think a lot of us were waiting to see how the Clippers would look coming after the long break, because remember, they had about a week off for the All-Star break, so everyone had an opportunity to get rested. Remember, Marcus Morris Sr. had a concussion in that last game going into the break. I think they played against the last game they lost to was the Washington Wizards. So I mean, Paul George was out of the lineup, then Kawhi Leonard was back, and so the Clippers had some issues. But I was really, focused in on Kawhi to see how he would look when he came out in that game. And let me just tell you, when he came out, he looked very sharp. Kawhi Leonard looked very, very sharp. He was playing with a lot of force. He was playing with a lot of intensity. I even looked at Paul George because during the live chat, we were live chatting during the game about this, and Paul George was attacking the basket. He wasn't getting the calls, but he was very aggressive going to the basket. But Kawhi Leonard was forcing the referees to blow the whistle. I mean, if you're not gonna give me those James Harden calls, those ones where like those those ghost fouls, he would just barreling into dudes and forcing you to blow the whistle. And he was very aggressive. He was hitting his 3-point shot, and he looked like the best player on the floor that's because he is the best player on the floor. Kawhi Leonard was the best player he was the best player on either team. He looked very decisive with the ball. His moves were quick. He was sharp. For the first time, his shots, let me just focus on this. Before the All-Star break, a lot of his shots were just off. Shots that you would normally see Kawhi Leonard make, he was missing them. And I'm just like, he was either shooting them too hard or too short, and I'm like, what is going on? Is something wrong with this guy's offense? I mean, he didn't look the same. But last night, he hit 5 3-pointers in that game, and he had 28 points before the starting of the fourth quarter. He didn't even play in the fourth quarter. Another thing that I was focusing in on was his defense. Kawhi was getting into dudes. He was playing with more intensity on the defensive end that I had seen him play in a long time. right? Because in the first half of the season, he wasn't really playing his best defense. He wasn't fighting over screens. He was giving up the switch too easily. But now it looked like he understood that he needed to start playing better. And let's face it, this team is going to go as far as Kawhi Leonard takes them because he's their most reliable player. Paul George has yet to prove that he can deliver in the highest leverage moments. He's had some good playoff appearances, but he's also had some times when he's done pretty poorly. So Kawhi Leonard is going to have to be the guy that really leads this team. Last year, you saw that's what he was doing in the playoffs. It's just that his teammates were just so inconsistent. Montrezl Harrell, Paul George, Lou Williams, these guys did not show up in the Orlando bubble, and Kawhi Leonard had a very poor Game 6 and Game 7, and Game 7 was probably the worst game he's ever played in the playoffs, and that's why they lost. But if you go back and look at the numbers, he was their best player by far, and he was playing better in the playoffs than he was playing in the regular season. All those other guys I just mentioned, they regressed. Okay, that's why the Clippers lost. Kawhi Leonard is part of the blame, but you got to blame those guys more because those guys didn't even show up to the bubble. So it looked like he's really understanding that, listen, this is the second half of the season and we really need to ramp things up. At the end of the game, he was interviewed by the TNT crew, by Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, and Shaquille O'Neal. And he said, listen, we desperately needed a win. He said we had lost four out of our last 5 games, and we had lost 3 games in a row. We desperately needed to win. And you can see that he came out with that type of intensity and that type of focus, and he looked dominant. And if this is the Kawhi Leonard that the Clippers are going to get in the second half of the season, then I expect the Clippers to do very well. Because let's just face it, Kawhi Leonard is an all-time great. Like, he's a very, very, very good basketball player. If we're talking about all-time rankings, he's up there with Kevin Durant, in my opinion. They're both very accomplished. Obviously, KD is a different type of player. He's a much more potent offensive scorer. Kawhi Leonard is a much more elite player on the defensive end. They're both very, very efficient players. They're both winners. They're both 2-time finals MVPs. So you can make an argument either way. And that's why when we've done comparisons with these guys, when I ask people, okay, who would you pick? It's always been a toss-up. Some people will go with KD, which I completely understand, and I usually go, and some people go with Kawhi, and including me, because they're really, really good. So listen, he needs to be an all-time great going into this season to really get this team to the hump. Because listen, the Western Conference, these guys are not going to they're not going to just roll over and capitulate for you. The Phoenix Suns are now the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. The Utah Jazz are still going to be there. Remember, they feel like they've been disrespected. The Lakers are most likely going to get their legs under them once they get Anthony Davis back. They're probably going to need to make 1 or 2 moves. I think the name that's been kind of circulating around is DeAndre Drummond I think he used to play with the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're trying to acquire him. So, he's going to need to be on his A game. But right now, I think he's looking dominant. And I expect this from him moving forward. They got some pretty interesting matchups coming up because they're going to be playing against the Pelicans, 2 games against the Dallas Mavericks. That's going to be a good test for him against Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis. Then they're also going to be playing the Atlanta Hawks. So I expect him to ramp his game up and really start playing at a high level because they're going to need him. Let's just be honest. And he needs to play better in the second stretch of the season than he did in the first half of the season for the Clippers to really improve. It's going to take off a lot of pressure on Paul George to just play his game. But if Kawhi Leonard is off, then Paul George and others are going to try to overcompensate. And that's when people are going to start doing things that's outside of their character. So for me, I think he's back to being dominant, although it's just 1 game, but it was against a very impressive team. The Warriors are not a joke. The Warriors have beaten every good team pretty much in the NBA, I think. They beat the Lakers. They beat the Clippers already once before. So it's not like I said the Warriors are a slouch. Yeah, they had a bad shooting night, but let's not just overlook the fact that the Clippers played great defense in that game. And at the end of third quarter, after 3 quarters, they held them to about 65 points per game. And Kawhi Leonard has something to do with that. So kudos to him. And I think he's back to being dominant again. And I expect more of this from him moving forward, if he remains healthy. So what I want to know from you guys is, do you think Kawhi Leonard is back on his game? Or do you think, listen, it's too early, it's only 1 game. Let's see how he performs over the next 10 games. Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoy the video, be sure to make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Once again, this is Charles here from Dreamerspro. Wishing you guys an amazing day. Catch you guys on the next episode.